Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Thursday, October 11th, 2018. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss, and here is a look at the daily time frame of the ES. First of all, I want to say thank you all to those of you who joined me last evening for my webinar, Profiting with Swing Trade Pro 2.0. That recording has been posted to the Twitter feed. There will also be a post coming out, so you'll see that here pretty soon. But if you haven't watched it already, check it out. Great feedback from that session here. And we talked about this recent decline in the markets, especially in tech. And right now, we're starting to see some of the signs that we talked about last night that we may begin to see if this thing is going to see a turnaround. Typically speaking, when you see a market that's been stretched so much like it is here, at least in the near term, you usually see some sort of snapback reaction. And right now, if you look at the intraday time frame, this tail right now is pretty much a box. This entire day right here is pretty much a box here where it's traded between 27.47s and 27.80s, and it's continued to just kind of bounce and build. Eventually, that structural may get broken to the upside, and we may start to bounce back up toward the midpoint of the impulse sell-off. The midpoint is right here. That's 28.46. That's a high probability target where we could reach that level within the next week to 10 days. We could even reach it in many cases in 1 to 3 days if this thing really wants to get an aggressive stop run to the upside. So again, very important level. Now, two things here. We also talked about this key range up here. Number one, this range, and we talked about that box. I kept mentioning if this thing can't hold the 28.78 halves, then we likely rotate back down toward 27.03 with a great test opportunity here at 27.91. We got through 27.91s and then some yesterday, closing much lower at around the 27.70s. That's significant how much this fell in one day, but again, that's the power of that concept that I mentioned throughout the month. Really, I mentioned here, this box sitting above this level is ominous, and if it can't hold, it could be significant. So we could still see weakness ahead. Right now, this is the most significant bottoming type of pattern. It's trying to develop, but it hasn't really triggered an upside push just yet. So again, got to keep an eye on this. Above 27.80s could squeeze back up. In this case, if this becomes a strong low, then we'd be looking at 28.46 very soon as a pullback point. At that point, it's up in the air whether we continue lower, whether we continue through, but at this point, that's the key range, and we could see development in that range or play off of it. So again, a lot to watch here in the ES and the markets, but we have a structure here where we could see potentially a bounce coming, but we'll keep an eye on it. Now let's take a look at the NQ. The NQ looks very similar as well. You'll see here the intraday time frame looks very similar to the ES. A box forming down here below 70.50 from 69.25 to 70.50. That's basically the day's range. Again, yesterday in that webinar we hosted, I mentioned that the 7K level here and into the 69.65 level, which is the FOMC key level from January, that level is very important, and we were almost there at as of the close yesterday. And I mentioned what may happen is we may flush down into that level, and then if we start to pop back above it, that could be our time that we bounce back. Now we have ourselves a nice low to work off of, and again, if price can push and hold above 70.50 today, by the end of the day, that could be quite bullish for a short-term reaction. That doesn't mean we're done overall. We could still, after hitting this 73.27 level, we're below market structure at that point, and we could either trade here or continue lower, or any number of things can happen. But right now, short-term, that could be the level if we can get above the 70.50s. Okay, let's take a look now at crude oil. We talked about the 75 to 75.27 level as being an area where bears were trying to defend and keep offered after rejection. And if that were to occur, we could see a pullback into about 72s. And that's been completed here over the last 2 days, where yesterday it dropped precisely off 75s and now hit 72s. A quick move down, and again now that level becomes a big time level of resistance. We have now pulled back within the scheme of this uptrending market, and again, given the upper value or higher value relationship in the uptrending market, this could be an opportunity to retry for new highs. But again, that 75 to 75.27 level going to be very, very important, even on a retest for bears as they try to keep it offered. So right now, this thing has pulled back significantly. We're now back to a level of market structure around 71.50 that could provide again the next bounce. How high does that next bounce go? We'll see. Does it just go to 74s? Does it go to 75s? Or does it try even a little higher? We'll have to see. But right now, this is a very important zone in the chart. It's a very clear market structure level, the 71.50 to 72 zone. And again, if price can pop above 72.75 today and hold that, this could be a pretty strong pivot low for at least a near-term try back towards 74s. All right, let's take a look now at gold futures. Here's gold. This one's been trending lower. Now, while the major bloodbath was happening yesterday in the market, this one really wasn't reacting like you thought it may, right? I mean, the Nasdaq was down 5%. The ES was down 4+%, and yet this was not up much at all to move the needle. Today it's up much more than it was yesterday, and it's up 1.2%. But again, still, it hasn't really shown the propensity to want to do anything. And so this is very puzzling. And then you look at something like the bonds, and again, barely a bounce on the needle, and much of that happening today. So, again, we're going to continue to watch 1220 and 1180. I've mentioned before there could be lots of chop in here. Lots of chop before it goes. When it does decide to go, it could be significant. But again, how far away is that time? We continue to see lower highs even on this structure, and so that would suggest that we may be near a near-term high right now before we turn back around. Who knows? But again, you got to avoid the chop in here until it's ready to go. When it is ready to go, again, we're estimating a pretty solid move could come out of this, somewhere about 75 to 80 handles of range. So that could be significant. All right, let's take a look lastly at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is down 5.66% right now. A huge sell-off. Remember, yesterday's move in the NQ was down 5%, and it was a giant day. This is down 5.6% already, and testing prices at 6,000. Again, 6,000 has been a big level. I'd mentioned this before. Sometimes when price gets stuck and it's not moving, sometimes it needs to flush down before it can go up. Sometimes it needs to run those stops, flush folks out, shake folks out of their position, become a better buying opportunity for others to, entice others to come in and defend. Those types of things. At some point, everyone right here is banking on an ETF being approved, in which case we'll see, Bitcoin 10,000, and that's be a big move from where we currently are. But when will that happen? Right? Every single time it's been false, and now it's just holding. At some point it may happen. Again, the charts say that this thing is descending, and sometimes it needs a big flush first. We've been talking about that fact. We'll see how it goes, but right now it's on the edge. And we don't spend much time below 6K. Last point. We spend one day below 6K before it bounces back up. This is one day and it bounced. This was one day and it bounced. That was one little morning, and it kind of bounced the next morning. So it doesn't spend much time there before it bounces. Is a break coming now? Because it could be significant. We'll see. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the rest of the session. Good luck and trade well.